on. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power and the glory are yours now and forever. If you'd like to remain standing for the recognition of the traditional landowners, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting here today on the traditional land of the Brakelong people of the Gunai-Kurnai Nation, and I pay respect to their elders past and present. If there are other elders present, I would also like to acknowledge them. Thank you. If you'd like to be seated. Latrobe City Council is currently live streaming council meetings via Facebook. Speakers at the council meeting, I'm sorry, that is not via Facebook, it's via YouTube. Speakers at the council meeting will be included in the audio recording, but not on the visual. If you have any concerns, please speak to a council officer. Conditions of entry. All members of the community attending the council meeting are asked to behave in a courteous and respectful manner before, during and after the meeting, and respectively, this includes no placards, posters or materials other than personal effects. In accordance with Local Law 1, please be advised the Chair may order and cause the removal of any person, including a councillor, who disrupts any meeting or fails to comply with the direction. Recording of council meetings. In accordance with Local Law 1, please be advised that a person must not operate audio tape or or other recording equipment at any council meeting without first obtaining the consent of a council or the chair, as in the case may be. Such consent may at any time during the course of such meeting be revoked by council or the chair, as the case may be. Apologies for absence. We have an apology from Councillor White. A little early in the meeting to making your presence known.
I'd like to make an impression, Mr Mayor. Could we just double check that our actual live feed is also being looped out to Facebook so that people know how to find it, please?
I'll ask that question of the CEO, who no doubt will ask the appropriate officer. So the answer,
right, Adam? Yes.
So the answer is for Councillor O'Callaghan that yes, it is being.
Right, any second. Yeah, that's on board. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I would remind councillors that with Councillor White absent, there is the potential for the Mayor having the casting vote. So think hard about how you vote. And it's April Fool's Day. This can't get any better, can it? Okay, declaration of interests. Before asking for any declarations of interest, we have 3 already registered. Councillor Clancy declared an interest that is not a conflict of interest under Section 79B of the Local Government Act in respect of item 11.5, which is the 2019 Youth in Search Program. Councillor McFarlane has declared a direct particular interest in 13.1 2019-20 draft budget, and Councillor Howe has declared a direct particular interest in exactly the same item. Are there any other declarations of interest? Okay. Move on to adoption of the minutes of the meeting of 18th of March 2019. Could I have a mover?
Happy to move.
Councillor Gibson, second. Councillor McFarlane. Do either of you wish to speak? No speakers. Anybody against? Opposed, sorry. On that basis, carried unanimously. Acknowledgements. Councillors may raise any formal acknowledgements that need to be made at this time. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On Friday night, Councillor Howe and I went to the Eastern Zone Premier Netball Championships, their grand final, and it was greatly attended from people as far away as Bensdale right through. And our Moeen District Netball Club and the Sale Association ran that event in conjunction with Netball Vic. And it was a great event, great time had by all, and well worth the effort. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson. Any other speaker? Councillor Law.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to announce that a local Moe girl now at university in America has just been selected for her first game in Matildas on Friday night in the soccer, which will be a fantastic achievement for a young girl to achieve the highest level of soccer in our country. Thank you.
Councillor Law, before you sit down, could we have her name?
Tegan Micah.
Tegan Micah. Right. That's great. Any other councillors? If not, we'll move on to public question time. Excuse me. Do we have any questions from the public, Mr CEO? Yes, we do have.
Yes. Thank you, Mr Mayor. So we do have two questions for Mr Geddes, who is in the audience tonight. So the first topic is related to revocation of EPA approval. So the question is, when will Latrobe City Council take action to revoke the approval which lacks basic due diligence, including a recommendation by a government department that has no demonstrated expertise in the handling of hazardous material? So this relates to the EPA approval regarding the landfill. So Latrobe City Council has no power in response, to revoke EPA approvals in certain instances where parties feel aggrieved by the EPA issuing a works approval or certain licences. People can appeal to the Victorian Civil Administrative Tribunal for an independent review of a decision, but that has to occur within 21 days of EPA's decision. And the second question relates to the topic of EPA approval for EBAC asbestos to go to Hazelwood. So the question is, has the EPA had any discussions, correspondence with the Latrobe City Council for the above to proceed without consultation with the community or objection, and in stark contrast with the statement in page 15 of the attached minutes of the 6th of August 2018. So in response to that, in relation to the approval issued by the EPA to allow asbestos from EBAC, the former Moore Power Station, I might say, to go to landfill at the neighbouring NG site, which is the Hazelwood Power Station, no discussion or correspondence has occurred between Council and the EPA for this approval without consultation with the community. The EPA follows a prescribed process when dealing with all licences and approval applications in accordance with the EPA Act. In relation to the minutes referred to of the August 6, 2018 Ordinary Council meeting, that referred to a separate matter where Council, as the responsible authority under the Planning and Environment Act, considered a planning permit application for a private asbestos disposal cell associated with the demolition of the former Moore Power Station. At the Ordinary Council meeting of 1 October 2018, Council issued a notice of decision to refuse a planning permit for that application.
Thank you, Mr CEO. The next section, councillors, is speakers on items on the agenda, and my notes say there are no speakers.
There are none, Mr Mayor.
Move on to item 9, notices of motion. There is a notice of motion about additional car parking in Moe from Councillor Gibson. So I take it you're moving this, Councillor Gibson?
Yes, please.
And Councillor Law is seconding. Is there any opposition? Do you wish to speak, Councillor Gibson? Okay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I raised this notice of motion because, unfortunately, every time we've had discussions about additional car parking, which is really needed in the Traralgon and the Mall railway sector, Moe's been left off the map. And if you actually go to Moe and you commute at all, or try to commute at all, you know that the car parking is a real issue there. We have got issues with the old service station that needs to be addressed. There's a stalemate because the lease isn't up, and then who's going to actually rectify any any problems with the car park. So yes, that's an issue, but we're at a stalemate. We really need the additional car parking for Moe, and to be kept off the list all the time is wearing pretty damn thin. Now, I've put this motion up to see also, not just for Big Track, but in the past there's been private-public partnerships. Why can't we look at that? If there's anybody in the business sector who wish to do any arrangement with that, why not bring it into the mix? So just putting it out there that we need it and looking at different proposals that can actually address the problem at Moe. Thank you.
Councillor Law.
Okay.
Any other councillor wish to speak? There having been speakers, we'll have to put it to the vote. I'll go down this side. Councillor Clancy, for. Councillor O'Callaghan, for. Councillor Harriman, for. Councillor Howe, for. Councillor Law, definitely for. Councillor Gibson, for. Councillor McFarlane, for. That is carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 13, which is the council budget. With your indulgence, I'll seek to have this moved in 3 separate motions to allow the declared conflicts of interest to be cleared before we get to the. That's right. Okay. So, councillors, you have alternate motion 1A, and is that? Yes, that's a good idea. And the other councillor who declared a conflict should move? Only one?
Separate. So one goes out.
Happy to move the first, Mr Mayor, that Councillor McFarlane.
Councillor, I was, before Councillor McFarlane threw me off, about to suggest to councillors that we move both motions together, and then both councillors could leave at the same time. So what I'm proposing is alternate motion 1A and alternate motion 1B be moved together.
Comfortable?
Yeah. So,
First enough to half back flank, mate, just like in the old days.
now, I don't know what's appearing behind me, but I don't appear to see the alternates 1A and 1B. So I'll read them out. So Councillor O'Callaghan, you would be moving that Council confirms the proposed salaries and wages in the early learning and care service to be included within the 2019-20 budget, and that Council confirm the proposed budget allocation for the construction of sports lighting at the Trog and West Sporting Complex to be included within the 2019-20 budget. By moving those two together, we clear the conflicts declared by Councillor Howe and Councillor McFarlane.
So move, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any opposition councillors? Any councillor wish to speak?
Just to confirm, as you've stated, Mr Mayor, that this is just to allow Councillors McFarlane and Howe to exercise conflicts in relation to these 2 items which form part of the overall budget, so they've only been separated out for that purpose. There is nothing else pertaining to these matters that make them any different to any other line item within the budget. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Callaghan. Councillor Gibson. Is there any other councillor wish to speak? As we've had speakers, we'll have to vote. Councillors, Councillor Clancy, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson. Declare that carried, and myself, of course, I declare that motion carried. We now move on to the substantive recommendation in relation to the budget. It should be now appearing behind me as alternate 1C. I'll have to turn around. The alternate motion 3
It's now 1C.
is now 1C. Councillors, effectively, by removing the conflicts for the 2 councillors, this is the substantive motion to move the budget in all detail except for the 2 items we've just covered. So, do I have a mover? Councillor Harrigan moved, seconded. Councillor Howe. Okay. Do we have any opposition? No opposition. Do we have anybody? Oh, sorry. I'll give the option to Councillor Harriman. Do you wish to speak? No. Councillor Howe, do you wish to speak? Any other councillor wish? You are speaking for.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to speak to the work that's been undertaken in relation to this year's budget, particularly in relation to the consultation. As with all things related to our budget, there is a level of interest from community groups and from a range of stakeholders in relation to this, and we now put out the draft budget to allow our community to, I guess, explore our thinking in a little more detail. This does outline a number of things, Mr Mayor, which is fairly consistent with budgets that we would normally present. Our consideration of fees, charges, also consideration of infrastructure, maintenance works around the municipality and a broad range of projects. We are, of course, in a time of significant growth in relation to our infrastructure projects, so there is consideration of what that significant capital works program implication will be on our budget itself. But as with all of these things, it's important for the community to be able to provide us with their feedback. So we're very happy to recommend this draft budget. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Callaghan. Does any other councillor wish to speak? If no other councillor wishes to speak, Councillor Harriman, you can still exercise your closing rights? No. As we've had speakers, councillors, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself, carried unanimously. Move on, councillors, to item 14.1, and councillors, I would ask, if you are moving this one, that you nominate the two councillors where the gaps appear in the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Moving the alternate, which actually has that information included for you.
I was happy for you to pencil it in, but you're telling me I have an alternate motion here?
It came through, but that's it.
On the back? Top one. It nominates Councillor O'Callaghan and Councillor Gibson, and that's what's behind me, is it? Okay, moved Councillor O'Callaghan and seconded Councillor Gibson. Any opposition? No opposition. Councillor O'Callaghan, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The advisory committee that we're looking to convene in relation to animal welfare in the municipality is one that we have discussed a number of times in the chamber. This formalises the terms of reference, also nominates the councillor participation, being myself and Councillor Gibson, who has kindly agreed to assist in relation to this work. We also made a slight change to the initial terms of reference provided. The offers therefore provide us with ex officio support as opposed to membership within the committee itself. We will now move through to a process where we seek expressions of interest to fill the community representative roles that will further help to advise and inform the work that we do in relation to animal welfare within the municipality. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Callaghan. Councillor Gibson.
I'll reserve.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Did you wish to speak, Councillor Gibson?
Just quickly, this advisory committee, I think it's very important in the fact that many people are really passionate about their animals and very concerned about different things have gone down in the past, and this is what this the term of reference is about, but the committee is all about. It's been a project which was actually started by Councillor O'Callaghan with the concerns of the community, and we've actually listened to the community, and that's what that's all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Any other councillor wish to speak? Do you wish to close, Councillor O'Callaghan?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. On that basis, as we've had speakers, we'll have to put it to the vote. Councillor Clancy, 4. Councillor O'Callaghan, 4. Councillor Harriman, 4. Councillor Howe, 4. Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself, carried unanimously. Move over to 14.2, councillors, domestic wastewater management plan. The item is behind me. Yes, it is. Moved, Councillor McFarlane. Seconded, Councillor Law. Okay. Any opposition, councillors? No opposition. Councillor McFarlane, would you like to speak?
Well, it's fairly straightforward, Mr Mayor. This document has been out for community consultation, and those comments have been noted in the body of the report. It's now appropriate that we endorse the plan and make it available for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Law? No, thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor McFarlane, do you wish to close? On that basis, having had speakers, we'll put it to the vote. Are those 4? Councillor Clancy, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself, carried unanimously. Do you want the blind closed, Councillor Gibson? Move on to item 14.3, councillors, which is the International Investment Forum participation. Was there an alternate proposal? No, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there is an alternate, Mr Mayor.
But you're moving. You're moving. Okay. Councillor Harriman, second.
Just adds, endorses the mayor or his delegate. I saw that.
Happy to second.
Okay, thank you.
Or his delegate, so it endorses the mayor or his delegate.
Oh, okay. I'm sitting here having conniptions. I thought the main one was going through. I'm sorry. Or his delegate, okay. Any opposition, councillors? Opposition from Councillor McFarlane. And
That's okay, I'll just stand it around.
that's right. It gives you the opportunity to be seen. Councillor O'Callaghan, did you
Just
wish
a question,
to raise a question?
Mr Mayor, if I may, before we enter debate in relation to this matter. Just wanted to seek clarification around another matter relating to a delegation discussed by councillors in relation to STEM, and whether or not this would potentially impact on the capacity to deliver upon that previously discussed consideration.
Mr CEO, are you able to answer that?
No, I'm not, Mr. I'm not sure whether my General Manager has any further advice on that one. City Development? No.
Yep, through you, Mr Mayor. There won't be any impact on that delegation if Council chose to endorse that delegation later on in the year from a budget perspective.
Just confirming, Mr Mayor, that one didn't replace the other in that sense. Thank you.
Okay, you're happy with that answer? All right, move back to Councillor Harriman, the mover.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise in support of this tour. In November 2018, members of the Japanese Oil, Gas and Metals National Corporation, or JOMEG, which has a balance sheet of 11.7 billion Australian dollars for investment, visited Latrobe City, met with then Mayor Councillor White and a number of councillors in this room to look at investment in this region, and offered an invite to an investment forum in Japan to be run in May. Latrobe City will be the only Victorian municipality invited to this forum, and it gives us a unique opportunity to showcase the region and to sell our assets What it does, it gives us the opportunity to meet with 130 to 150 companies ready to invest overseas. The important part of JOGMEC is that they are looking at overseas investment. This gives us a great opportunity to sell a number of the natural assets we've got, and in particular, obviously, coal, to an investment company with the money to come in and actually invest and create jobs in the area. And again, I state, this invitation was offered to the Mayor by the Executive Vice President of JOGMEC, by the President of JOGMEC, on that visit. Mr Mayor, I cannot stress enough how important it is for us to participate in this meeting. We'll be travelling with the Victorian State Government. We'll be meeting with companies that can put that sort of money into this region. We keep saying as a council that jobs are our most important investment. We're looking at spending $17,000, if I can find the page, Mr Mayor, in total $17,200 when we're looking at the possibility of hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. I see that as a no-brainer. It also gives us the opportunity, while the Mayor or his delegate is over there, to visit those businesses involved in the hydrogen project, basically Kawasaki Heavy Industries and J-Power, and I believe there's also been an opportunity or an invite offered by J-Power to visit a high-efficiency, low-emissions power station in Yokohama while we're there. This is the type of power station that's been talked about by a lot of people being perfect to set up in the Latrobe Valley. So I fully support it, Mayor, and recommend it to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Councillor Howe.
I'll reserve at this stage, please.
Reserve, okay. Councillor McFarlane, speaking against.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support our involvement in the business forum and the other opportunities that flow from that. As Coal Resources Victoria are also participating, I'm not sure that we necessarily require 4 members of our team to participate in the delegation. And then reading the report further on, appreciating that Takasago is only 586 kilometres from Tokyo, I would just question the economic benefit to Latrobe City of an extra 3 days to visit Takasago. So whilst I support the concept, it's the scale that I don't support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McFarlane. A speaker for? A speaker against? Does any other councillor wish to speak? If not, Councillor Howe, you're reserved.
I think this is just too great an opportunity for this council to pass up. Coal is our greatest asset, and we're struggling to get support from the state government and any significant funds for research and development. This is our opportunity here to be able to meet with the people that are making the decision to try and entice. Sorry. Oh, sorry. To try and get some investment, get some economic activity, and hopefully get some jobs.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Harriman, do you wish to close?
Ever so briefly, Mr Mayor, if I can. I understand Councillor McFarlane's reticence about sending to Takasago. Sorry, Mr Mayor. I would like to point out that last time they were here, they did mention they were accompanied by the President, Vice President, a number of committee members of their Chamber of Commerce. Their Chamber of Commerce oversees $32 billion worth of trade. One of the things that Mr Nabori, who is the Mayor of Takasago, did mention, and the Chamber of Commerce brought up as well, was that they have a number of university-age students looking to travel to go to university, as Takasago doesn't have a university. They have in the thousands leaving Takasago every year. There happens to be a little university in a little town very dear to Councillor White's heart, just out the road, which I think... Sorry?
Oh, I just said Yanar.
Close, Mr Mayor. Yanar's got its own university. Yanar North, also known as Churchill. There is a great option and a great chance to start rebuilding that university and the number of foreign students it used to have before a former university that was out there left and took them all with them, Mr Mayor. So I ask my councillors to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Having been speakers, we'll put this one to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor... You can't write just on here. Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, and against Councillor McFarlane. That item is carried. We'll move on now to item 15.1, Infrastructure and Recreation. Interim policy on the temporary naming rights of sporting grounds and fields. Do I have a mover? Councillor Law. Second, Councillor Gibson. Any opposition?
Question, Mr Mayor.
Question, certainly.
Mr Mayor, just a question. Has this interim policy been circulated in its current form to the users?
I'll ask Mr CEO to respond to that.
I'm getting a positive affirmation from the General Manager, Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Recreation that it has, as we committed last week.
No further question? You're happy with that? All right. I did ask, was there any opposition? No opposition. Councillor Law, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is just, as the title says, it's an interim policy. It's the first time that we've created a policy like this about naming rights for all our grounds, sporting facilities. It's basically trying to put in context a set of rules that all our clubs and that can abide by. So it's just a uniform policy. Now it's going to be a working policy as we move forward, because at this point in time, every ground has different dynamics, different outbuildings, and there's a lot of different infrastructure in place at different buildings. But what our officers trying to do is basically come up with a guidelines that will create a policy that will basically apply to every club, that we will see clear black and white descriptions of what they can and what they cannot put signs on, and to particular sizes, and it will benefit both all user groups for all round, whether it's cricket, football, soccer or sport clubs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Gibson.
Just quickly, Mr Mayor, noting that this is an interim policy, so the clubs need to look at what the actual policy will be, and they don't need to get too upset at the moment because it's an interim policy, but I would advise them to look at what the policy is going to be, and if they've got any problems, to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? If not, Councillor Law, do you wish to close?
No, thank you.
Okay. Having had speakers, councillors, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself, carried unanimously. Move on to 15.2 on the agenda, Moe Teenagers Project Update. Do I have a mover? Sorry, Councillor Gibson. Moved Councillor Gibson, seconded Councillor Law. Any opposition, councillors? No opposition. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Gibson?
Just quickly, thank you, Mr Mayor. This has been a long time coming, this project, and the Moe teenagers are really excited that this is coming. When Russell Broadbent came and gave them the money in the first place, they were overjoyed. But what they were seeking to do and what happened with the money was not quite matching. So they've looked at how it can actually work to suit their needs, what they've been trying to address all along, and that's why we've actually had a change in the actual plan as to what they will do, but it will address the issues they had. Now, there is some money left over, and I'd be really keen for Russell Broadbent to... There's some other projects in Moe that I'd love to get up and running, but at the moment this is going through. So I'd urge my fellow councillors to support this.
So most of the time you've actually been talking to the Express, councillor.
No, but I will. Thank you.
Councillor Law. Okay. Any other councillor wish to speak? No speakers. On that basis, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself. Carried unanimously. Move over to 15.3, delegate. I note you, Councillor O'Callaghan. Delegate authority to the Chief Executive Officers to award Stage 4 of the Traralgon to Morwell Shared Path. I take it, Councillor O'Callaghan, you'll be moving an alternate motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
And that is the one... Yes. So that the wording behind me is what you're moving. It's actually slightly different than on my sheet.
No, I've got that council received the report.
That's what I have, that one there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just moving, thank you.
Councillor O'Callaghan moving the item that is behind me on the board. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howe. Do I have any opposition? No opposition. Councillor O'Callaghan.
Just by way of explanation, Mr Mayor, in relation to this, the report recommendation was that we effectively escalate the delegation available to the CEO to award a contract in relation to this particular matter. This is by no way an indication of councillors' intent in relation to the progress of the Traralgon to Morwell Shared Pathway, but more so an indication of a commitment to a robust and rigorous testing of governance process and procedure in relation to larger scale projects. So we will basically be receiving the report, and then once tender information becomes available, that will return to the Chamber for further consideration as per our usual processes. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Callaghan. Councillor Howe. All right, any other councillor wish to speak? No other councillor wishes to speak. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself. Carried unanimously. Move on to, I appear to have skipped a page. On to 15.4, Traffic Safety Initiative, application to Community Road for a Community Road Safety Grant. I note you, Councillor Clancy. You're moving. Okay. Councillor Clancy moved.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Howe. Any opposition? No opposition. Councillor Clancy.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This resolution is for Council to make an application to Community Road Safety Grants Program. There's two parts of the program, as you'll see in the resolution: the standard program, and then there's the Towards Zero Challenge program. These programs, if we are successful in these grants, this resolution is just moving us forward to making the application for the grants. If we are successful in these, we'll be able to implement some advertising campaigns to raise awareness for road rules at intersections, and particularly looking after pedestrian safety, as well as the Towards Zero Challenge program, which is attacking or addressing driver fatigue. So this is a really worthwhile program to make application to, and it's fantastic that Council is moving forward to make those applications.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Councillor Howe.
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, anything that Council can do to support and help minimise fatal and serious accidents in our community, I'm 100% behind, and that's why I support this.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Any other councillor wish to speak? No. On that basis, would you like to close, Councillor Clancy? No, thanks. Okay. So having had speakers, we'll have to put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself. Carried unanimously. Move over to 17.1, councillors, a review of council delegations. Quite a lengthy item there. It's moved by Councillor McFarlane. Second, Councillor Clancy. Any opposition? No opposition. Councillor McFarlane. Okay. I'm just wondering whether I class that as you having spoken or not. I think I'll... No. Councillor Clancy.
Tempting, but no.
Tempting, but no. Having not had any opposition and no speakers, I'll declare that one carried unanimously. I note you, Councillor.
Another alternate, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. I'll just have a look through my list of alternates here. Okay. Councillor O'Callaghan is moving an alternate, which is on the board. Is that your alternate?
It is, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so on that basis, Councillor O'Callaghan moving the alternate, and do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Harriman. Any opposition? Again, opposition to the alternate motion. Any opposition? No opposition. Councillor O'Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just want to speak to the review of the electronic surveillance policy. The nature of the policy that's actually been provided in the public agenda at this point has changed somewhat. I am proposing a level of change that will give greater, authorisation and access protocols, and more importantly, consistency around the application regarding the governance processes. It also ensures that we interact not only with law enforcement agencies but other third parties in a way that's appropriate and considerate of community expectations in relation to the surveillance. It also serves a purpose of ensuring that there is adequate implementation requirements for organisations who happen to have surveillance on council-owned land that isn't operated by council. There's also some consideration to the delegations, so at what level the surveillance data can be reviewed, can be provided to third-party organisations, and the basis on which that is retained, secured and utilised not only by the organisation but by third-party entities as well. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Callaghan. Councillor Harriman, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any other councillor wish to speak? On that basis, Councillor O'Callaghan, do you wish to close?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Having had speakers, councillors, we have to put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor O'Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself, carried unanimously. Next item is 17.3, tabling of Assembly of Councillor records. Do I have a mover? Councillor Gibson. Seconded. Councillor Howe. Any opposition? Councillor Gibson. Procedural. Happy with that? If everybody is happy with that, having had no speakers, we will move on. Class that as carried unanimously. Move on to urgent business. Now, we do have a matter of urgent business, councillors. I remind you that the procedure is basically that a councillor stands and moves and requires a seconder to introduce an item of urgent business. That is voted on. If it is then introduced, the matter becomes a substantive matter to be debated and voted on. So, Councillor Harriman, you are moving...
Moving, sir.
Moving and seconded Councillor Gibson. Just to make it a little easier, can you explain what you actually moved?
Mr Mayor, I bring this as urgent business on the grounds that the matter to be discussed has already started costing jobs, and if left for another 4 weeks will not only cause more job shedding or massive job losses, whichever way you like to put it, it will also, from what we have been told or led to understand, lead to the closure of some businesses, and those businesses will not reopen and the jobs will not return. If we leave it another 4 weeks, then we are putting at risk more than just jobs. We're starting to put at risk an industry. Without going into details, Mr Mayor, if this matter is not resolved, then we are going to get below a critical mass for this industry to continue.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harriman. Do you want to add anything to that, Councillor Gibson?
Just that it is time critical.
Okay. Councillors, you have before you a request from Councillor Harriman to introduce a item for consideration in relation to a timber industry plan that he feels should be released quickly. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Kelligan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself. We now move on, Councillor Harriman, to you moving at the...
Happy to move, Mr Mayor.
Now, hopefully that is what is on the board. Is
Yes,
that,
Mr Mayor.
That is correct. You're happy with that? Yep. Councillor Harriman moving. Councillor Gibson...
Seconding.
...is seconding. Any opposition, councillors? If there is no opposition, Councillor Harriman, would you like to speak?
If I could, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to fill people in, the timber release plan is a key strategy that dictates where native timber can be harvested by the state-owned Vic Forests. This plan was due to be released in July 2018. The government is now refusing to table the document, and it is having serious implications on the Gippsland timber industry. The delivery on the timber industry is about 20% less than what was identified already, and it is placing enormous strain on the future of the workforce. It's having a massive flow-on effect to the regional Victoria. And I won't go into the next bit. Mr Mayor, what is basically happening is the regional forestry agreements have not been signed. This is what gives harvesters the right to start a coop and log that coop. Without that certainty, they cannot guarantee work for industry employees as of now. A number of companies have started shedding staff, a number of companies selling off equipment, and it's having a huge impact on the timber industry. What we're asking is for the government to release a plan it was meant to release 9 months ago. We're also asking the MAV, which is the Municipal Association of Victoria, which is the peak body for councils and shires throughout Victoria, to actually advocate to the state government to release the plan immediately. Mr Mayor, I cannot say how important this is to the timber industry in our region, not only in Latrobe City but right across Gippsland. The non-release of this plan is having devastating effects not only on the jobs of industry workers but on the mental health of industry workers and industry bosses. So I would ask my fellow councillors to support this motion.
Councillor Harriman, if I could just ask you a point of clarification. Will release of the plan lead directly to authorisation of logging plans?
Yes, Mr Mayor. That's what will be in it. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To go on from what Councillor Harriman was stating, it is time critical. Now, this council has said many, many times that we're all about jobs. It's not just the jobs. Yes, it will affect many with jobs, but the mental health that Councillor Harriman was stating, that's the tip of the iceberg, because it then is the whole families. It is critical that this information is released, because you cannot have a business without knowing what the parameters are. As I say, I just can't express enough how critical this is to be released by the government.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Has any other councillor wish to speak?
Yes.
Councillor Law.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This goes beyond what Councillor Harriman has just indicated. This is just another culling exercise by the state government of trying to condense an industry where there's fewer players, so it only has to deal with some bigger players in the industry, and it's basically wiping out the smaller player in our workforce. And this goes right across the state. This also has another major flow-on effect, which people don't realise, is the fact that all these businesses that support the timber industry, when we have our bushfire season, all their equipment is seconded by DWELP to fight the fires. If we start wiping out all these contractors, there's going to be a point in time where there's going to be not enough machinery to fight fires. There was an incident this year where someone went to go and get his bulldozer in East Gippsland, and there was a greenie chained to it, and he had to leave it there and couldn't go and fight the fires. This is the reality of the situation. The state government doesn't own a heap load of bulldozers and equipment to fight fires. We can just go and take out another level of our support service to our defence systems for firefighting. We put ourselves all at risk. So our whole fire management plan comes under risk because we don't release this plan. We need contractors in our state to be able to help fight fires in our defence services, and this is a vital, important part of this whole thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Does any other councillor wish to speak? If not, Councillor Harriman, would you like to close?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I was going to close with some of what Councillor Law said, but he said it so well I won't go over it again. That was awesome, thank you. What I will point out, Mr Mayor, is that Oswest Timbers in East Gippsland, which was a major employer in the region and employs trucking companies out of our region and staff out of our region, out of our council, out of our shire, has announced that it's closing already because this plan hasn't been released. I was talking 2 days ago on Saturday at a bull riding event to a logger I know, runs a company, was just about, or was intending to buy $1 million of equipment through a local supplier, one harvester. He's now not ordering that because he doesn't know if he's going to have anywhere to harvest come the release of this plan or the non-release of this plan. The RFAs are up in July. Can you imagine running a business where you invest, and this contractor has $3 million, $4 million worth of equipment sitting there that he's not sure he's going to be able to use, that he's not sure he's going to be able to sell off, and he was wanting to invest another $1 million locally in a local business to buy equipment that he can't do. And Councillor Law's right. Not only does it affect how we fight bushfires, it also affects the flow onto the local economy in diesel that's sold, in people buying their potato cakes and dim sims at the local takeaway food shop on their way through when they're starting work at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. It has a huge flow on to sporting clubs because a lot of these contractors support their local footy club, their local soccer club, their local netball club. They also provide the kids to those clubs. So when people say, oh, we're only going to lose a few jobs in the timber industry, it's not just a few jobs, it is hundreds, if not thousands. When they were talking about closing Australian Sustainable Hardwood in Hayfield, they asked them to do a report on how many jobs flow on from that mill. It employed 300 to 400 people. The flow on jobs down the line were 10,000. We cannot afford in this area to have that devastating effect laid on the working community here and the rest of the community. So, Mr Mayor, I ask my councillors to support this, and I ask the state government, please release the timber plan and show some respect to regional Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Having heard speakers on that one, we will move to a vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Gibson, Councillor McFarlane and myself. That's carried unanimously. That brings us to the end of the agenda, the open to the public section. We'll now move to close the meeting to the public, and the motion should be on the board behind me. Do I have a mover? Councillor Clancy. Do I have Councillor Gibson? Second. Do I have any opposition? No opposition. I'll declare that carried. We'll now close the meeting and invite the members of the gallery to join the councillors in a short celebration of the CEO's 50th birthday. In the kitchen, I hope. And we'll say farewell to our viewers on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you.